All right, everyone. The FCC chair the other day came out in sort of response to the whole thing over net neutrality. People are like, well, you're going to save net neutrality. There'll be like censorship and bias and all these horrible problems, throttling. And he came out and he said something that is, I mean, on its face, it's totally true, which is, hey, there's a problem online with like Facebook and Twitter and stuff having political bias and censoring people and really, hammering away at the idea of free speech on the net. That's really the problem. The ISPs haven't been so much an issue. So net neutrality has to do with the ISPs, but the real problem that you should be identifying is, hey, Twitter has a bias. It bans conservative commentators and stuff. He's correct. I would point out, though, it's not just conservatives, it's the alt media in general, number one, which happens to be like 90% conservatives, number two, because, of course, most of the establishment media leans towards the neoliberal corporate side instead of the neoconservative corporate side. See, they're corporations, the political parties, and these two vaguely differentiated ideologies. They have different sort of proponents and components. And so it makes it look like the establishment media is like far left or something. It's not really, it's just neoliberal, but therein lies the problem. Of course, people who consider themselves to be really far right, they feel alienated. So they go online, and then something politically incorrect is said. Something outside of the Overton window is said, and, that's a big problem. You got to ban people for it. It's like, 10 years ago, you didn't have this issue. 10 years ago, people were worried about their kids seeing, like, someone kissing online, and they didn't really care about the offensive side of stuff, because, like, yeah, but, that stuff's, it's fun, number one. It's going to be there, number two. Number three, yeah, free speech, which doesn't extend to the kissy stuff or the drugs, but it does extend to, you shout racial slurs all day. People understood that. Now they've inverted it, so there's still abuse going on. It's just the foot is on the other shoe. Personally, I think there should be no abuse of people's free speech and expression whatsoever. Now, here's the thing. Here's the funny stuff. While he is right, I think that this is being said by the FCC chair for political reasons. Even if I fundamentally agree that it's true. Twitter's censorship is prevalent. It's becoming a problem. He should have pointed out, by the way, that these sites increasingly are censoring material because of the urging of Western Europe. People like Angela Merkel. The American people, those that don't yet pay attention to alt media, they need to be informed that a lot of these problems are coming from Merkel, and they're coming from France with French censorship. Certainly the UK in some cases. That's really where it's stemming from. It's not all homegrown in the US. If you want to talk about foreign states attempting to influence US media and politics, a lot of that comes from Western Europe. It doesn't come from Russia. Most of the bots may be, more of the bots may be Russian, but more of the authoritarian commentators and legalese, that comes from the European Union. Specifically the part of the European Union that wasn't behind the Iron Curtain a while back and doesn't really know what it's like to be oppressed in the sense of speech and expression, or freedom of movement or anything else, to tell the truth. Talk about your Shenzhen area, it's really rather funny. But I think this is for political reasons that it was said. The idea is to get the alternative media, by and large, to support repealing net neutrality by making it seem as though you couldn't have both net neutrality and crack down on, the tech firms attempting to censor people for otherwise lawful opinions. That's really what it boils down to. It's almost an attempt to manipulate us coming from the FCC. It makes me slightly uncomfortable. In all honesty, I'll say this. I don't know if Trump himself is the mastermind of this particular comment, although it does sound very Trump-like to use such a strategy. I think it's coming more from the FCC chair, maybe just himself, but it is manipulative because it tries to create a false dichotomy, and we have to be aware of that. And of course, I've come out and said, I've pointed this out multiple times, I'm mildly in favor of net neutrality just because it's been there and hasn't apparently been an issue with the ISPs so far. But at the same time, it's impossible to tell whether the ISPs ultimately would be more efficient or there'd be more competition if it were repealed. There's no way to tell that. That's in the future. It probably, net neutrality is going to be gone, I would presume. But if you could protect the expression that goes on social media. You say, well, any site that's got such and such an amount of a market share as a parent company cannot, censor beyond certain boundaries. Basically, if it's criminal or pornographic, you can censor it. Spam, obviously, because, no real user is ever really voluntarily interacting with it because it's something they want. It's spam, wrongfully tagged or wrong thumbnail or something. Beyond that, you can't censor anything. People have to have the right to have their opinions. Now, there's a big difference between someone used a racial slur and someone aimed it at another person and said, well, I think we should lynch you. One is a potential threat, fighting words, harassment, stalking, whatever. The other one is totally innocuous. They're just saying their opinion. Who cares if it's hateful? Being hateful is not against the law. Carrying out on your hatefulness towards other people or their property or something like that, or attempting to suppress them, that's illegal. I find it very funny that the basic premise of this victimhood mentality is, hey, don't be oppressing us, and yet you're attempting to oppress other people by removing their ability to even speak. Now, there's no actual physical altercation. It's just two people who might be 1,000 miles apart talking to each other. By the way, in some cultures, since you like to be culturally relative, if you delve into this sort of thing, some of these people come from cultures where it's perfectly acceptable to use what we would consider to be quite ugly racial slurs, or they consider it acceptable to do any of a million other things that we don't personally like, and vice versa. Some of the things that we like here, criticizing religion's considered A-OK in the Western world. It's not considered A-OK in many parts of the Third World, or in a few parts of the westernized portion of the world, to tell the truth. At this point, you got resurgent religiosity in Eastern Europe, probably. The one thing that's helping them defend their sovereignty also might plunge them into totalitarianism. So they should be careful about that, I think. By the way, I'm still blocked in Poland, which I find hilarious. I'm assuming most of Poland uses German connections. But yeah, the FCC chair here is, I think, saying this specifically to be manipulative. I don't think this is being, out of the kindness of his heart, the head of the FCC says, well, we need more free speech online. I'm going to assume that this vapid bureaucrat probably doesn't have that in mind, and he's just saying, hey, we want to get rid of net neutrality, but we need a little bit more support. We're going to try to get as many people on the internet aboard as possible, make it like the cool kids, support repealing it. Specifically because we said, hey, but look, these big mean sites are already censoring you and the ISPs aren't. Well, they were prevented from doing anything that would be potentially censorious by net neutrality. That's the one good thing about it. Of course, the bad thing is, and people know this, maybe lack of competition, unnecessary regulation anyway, because the ISPs never will throttle and bundle and do all this bullshit. Yeah, okay. Let's see what happens, though. Judging which one would be better. It's almost all rhetorical when you're actually speaking about it. But as far as Twitter and Facebook stuff go, yeah, they're becoming increasingly heavily censored. On that token, he is correct. But he's not telling you that, I think, to be kind. I think this is there are ulterior motives going on in his statement. That's about all. Peace out.